Welcome back to the McCoy Leadership Podcast, elevating your impact through valuable insights and conversations about leadership. Welcome back to the McCoy Leadership Podcast. Today we have Matt Dorman with us. Matt is the co-founder and president of Endeavor, a digital infrastructure partner helping manufacturing companies modernize outdated websites and CMS platforms. That's a mouthful, but
it is.
Matt, thanks for joining us today, taking time out of your day to spend with our listeners and to enlighten us on what you're doing at Endeavor. How in the world did you end up at Endeavor?
Sure. Yeah, about 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago, my business partner and I, we founded Endeavor, but we were in technology. We were in a consulting company in New York prior to this. So leading into that, even I've always been in web development essentially since late high school, but not getting paid until freshman year in college. So
Okay.
I've been doing it quite a while, since the 90s, and just kind of progressed into working for companies, then working for, like I said, a consulting company, and then left that and decided to start my own agency essentially. And that's how we got to Endeavor. It's been a wild ride since, of course, but
Yeah. I'm always curious, what led you into programming to start with?
yeah. Well, I mean, I think what really started was, so I graduated high school in 96. So in high school, the internet, AOL kind of was there. And I was more interested in how things were versus just using it right away. Because we did, like in school, we did like basic programming and stuff. And that was always interesting to like be able to do something that could actually make something non-physical, obviously. But I was more interested in that. So I think it was just a really good timing for me, being in a place where I could do something and then people could actually see what I was doing really quickly. And then it grew from there.
Neat. I am not a programmer, but I know enough to be dangerous. And I remember we're roughly about the same age. We're like in our early 30s, I would say. Anybody can do math and figure out that's probably not right. But my first experience was my parents got me a Tandy computer that hooked up to the TV, and the only thing you could do with it was code. I mean, that was it. If you wanted a picture of a turkey, you had 5 pages of code to get a turkey.
Yep. I had the same one, or I don't know if they had multiple models. I can't remember back there, but it had some games too, and you could actually play game. I mean, it wasn't Atari type games, but they were close for the time.
You had to put your, there's going to be a bunch of people that are going to say, what's he talking about? You had to put your 3.5-inch floppy in, or 5 1/4 floppy, excuse me.
It was a big one.
And, to play a game. But anyhow, I'm always interested to hear that, because as I progressed, the only reason I learned Visual Basic and things like that was because I was like, well, this program doesn't do what I want it to do. I know I can make it do something else. So then you get into those things. So that's kind of cool. You concentrate on manufacturing companies. And you said in your introduction, modernizing outdated websites and CMS platforms.
Yeah, that was more of a general description of what we do. We've probably since not just focused, but really decided where we want to land. So we're actually manufacturing within the outdoor industry. So outdoor kind of companies, like I focus on the camping side of things, and camping and outdoor like overlanding type manufacturers. So they're all manufacturers, but they're all creating a small product.
Gotcha.
So not like the big manufacturing companies.
And my experience, my consulting roles are typically with manufacturing companies. It's where I spent a lot of my adult life as well. My experience has been there's not very many manufacturing companies that aren't outdated, unless they're brand new. I mean, they just started and they have a state-of-the-art setup that they just built. Basically, my experience has been a manufacturing company builds a plant whenever date zero is, whether that was 1950 or 2010. And not a whole lot changes for the next 50 years. But in today's world, I'm assuming that's where you guys fit in. We can't operate that way any longer.
Yeah, not really. I mean, if you just throw in automation, like obviously they automate their plant potentially, but we're talking about automation of data. So for order fulfillment or just inventory management, like all those things can be automated and actually kind of there are tools that can review it and push it to the right places. So, some of those are old. Some of those have been built, back in the day when we were talking when kind of my career started and never updated. So there's potential there, but also even in the last 10 years, there's plenty of things that can be added on to those systems.
So I want to, I guess, nerd out just a little bit for a second or two. How important is it? You mentioned, obtaining information, getting that information to who it needs to go to. How important today is it that our information talks to us? I'm trying to keep this as simple as I can. And our information is functional. That data that we are storing somewhere does something. How important is that today?
I think it's key for not just functionality, but accuracy as well. So you have like when things are up, like when their product lines are updated or when they're just messaging is different, those can get to the point where they're wrong, essentially, or they were created wrong in the first place. So those types of like minute details of like making sure that there's quick ways of updating the data, but also that it gets out to everyone accurately, like is one area where it's important. Because again, you're essentially, some of these companies are dealing with other businesses or B2B. We don't really focus on that side. We're mainly the ones that are direct to consumer. So their consumers are looking at this data, right? Product information or just information about the company. And they're making assumptions or just really just they're making decisions based on that information right away. And if it's wrong, clearly wrong, that's going to be a big red flag. And if it's wrong here, but right over here at the same, like it might as well be wrong in both places.
So these medium-sized businesses, there are so many things out there today. There are tools, I'm going to call them, where they can build their own app.
Yep.
So why should they come get a professional like you guys as opposed to using something that's out there to build an app?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of functionality in the apps that can build websites, let's say, and it gets you really, really long, like far down the path. Most companies, especially when you're starting, that's the most likely the right way. A lot of the company owners are probably still going to use someone, maybe not a company like ours. They're going to use an individual developer or something like that to like get them started on the platform. And those go, like I said, a long ways, potentially for the life of the company, depending on the size that they ever want to be. But if they're integrating with other systems, so once they start to realize that it's getting more complicated than this thing is doing, again, it's I'm trying to keep it like light, but if it's talking to an order fulfillment system that they've built or someone else built, right? It's starting to get more complicated than the website platform all by itself. So if they're trying to sell products on the website and it's having to communicate to those things, then those connections are going to be breaking a lot because there's two different systems that are going to be upgraded at different times and those things. So having a company like ours or a more advanced developer is really at that point is starting to get necessary. And it's not like we have to be there full time either.
And I kind of believe as well, any company, you got to ask yourself the question, do I want to be a development company? I just talked with a company, in manufacturing, and basically they said, well, we've kind of come to the conclusion that no matter what our business is, we're really just a technology company. And, I understand that. But my question, to them was, well, do you want to create technology? Like, are you sure that's where you want to go? Because you're telling me you want to keep making the widgets, but you're going to become a technology company that happens to make widgets. And now, you're going to have, you have to support what you make, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. So back in the late 90s, when an access database was still a thing, well, it still is, but there were people that made a living creating access databases. But the problem was when they moved on to the next job, you had nobody to update it, nobody to maintain it, nobody to support it. And so in your experience, what has been kind of that line where, okay, I need to go stop building my own stuff and I need to find somebody that can help me? Where's that line?
Yeah, I think it happens where, like, where you're talking about, do they want to be a technology company, or do they want to be, they want to build things, right? Let's say, but that goes across other industries. Like I worked in digital media, like entertainment websites, things like that, and it was the same idea. Like, do you want to be a content creation company, or do you want to be this technology? Because it's not just about, can you hire a person and maintain their salary? It's, do they want to be that one person out of 100, because they're not going to really fit in the company. So there's going to be that type of dynamic where, if you can't build a whole ecosystem around, I hate to say, like, the type of people that we are, and by we I mean me, my team, we're all developers, we're all technically focused, right? We're less social than some. I mean, all the things are pretty true.
Yep.
When you define us, right? So it's not that we can't fit in companies like that, but if we're the one person, the person, you're going to have kind of people coming in and out of that role. You're not going to be able to manage them properly, because the expectations are going to be different than the rest of the company. They're basically a cost center, let's say, and they're not producing anything. Like, all these things are, when they're small, and when the team size is small, it's not really it's then a cultural thing of, well, can we support the people? Because yes, you can support the financially, I'm sure, because it's cheaper to hire a person than to hire one contractor full time, right? That's just a known thing. But
Yeah.
it's because the contractor is probably part of a bigger company that they're going to stay with forever, or for a long time.
And I think as well, you just touched on something that made me kind of realize that, if I'm the CEO of a company, small to medium-sized company, we're just getting going, and now I have this need. Even if I hire somebody, if I came to you and said, Matt, I need you, I'm going to pay you 5 times, leave Endeavor, right, come over here. Mm-hmm. How in the world am I going to manage you in any way, shape, or form, or even even getting down to a leadership level of creating a strategic plan? Right. I have no idea what I'm talking about. So I'm relying on only you. Whereas if you have a relationship with a larger company, there might be multiple people, and you might end up getting a better solution.
That's a really good way of looking at it too, because even if they could hire me, right, with 30 years of experience doing, like, I have the capability to do all these things, but, like, the people on my team are way more experienced in widget A, like, development of this type of system or that type of system, right? I kind of know it at this point. And it goes down the line of, like, if I had hired a person with 8 years of experience, they're still not going to have all of the tool set that I need for a company, potentially. Now, with time, they can train, like, you're either losing time to get them to do it, or maybe some accuracy, and maybe that's going to be flawed a little bit. And sometimes those are fine to like, they're, again, if they're going to have to pay me, I'd love to be paid 5 times when I'm within a company, but it's not quite that margin at all. But it's definitely a premium, right? To go to an outside company and bring them in, because you're getting speed and just the ability for me, because if they're hiring our company, I can pull in different people at like fractions of their time, for their expertise. And you can't get that with one person when you're starting out. And you can't really get that even with a team of 3 or 4. So
absolutely. And actually, just yesterday, I had a conversation, and we were talking about possibly hiring somebody for this company, and it came out. It had nothing to do with technology, but really they just wanted one skill that this person had. Really, just not even long term. They needed it now, and they're looking at hiring this person. And again, my suggestion to them was, why don't you bring them on as a contractor for some period of time? Because you're fractionally going to pay what you would pay to have them on full time, and you only want the one skill, so only bring them on for the hours that you need that one skill until you grow, and then someday you might need that person. So I'm guessing when you guys go to meet with manufacturing companies, by the time they call you, they know that they have some sort of need.
Right.
What are the what are the biggest issues that you see when you are going in, having that consultation and putting together a plan for them, what are the biggest mistakes maybe you've seen they've already made? What I'm really getting at is for the people out there listening that are just starting a business or taking over a business, what are some of the don't do that's that you have?
Yeah. I think so we come in more frequently than not in two different kind of problem sets of the website's clearly outdated. They know it's broken. They know all these things, right? That's one way, but that's typically it's been brewing for a long time. And that's not like, I could just tell to them, like, just spend some money on maintenance. Like you don't have to spend money on a team like ours if you're doing it along the way, because it'll be small things all the time. But the other side of things, like with new companies, because the other where we come in there's either a redesign or because they've merged, or there's a new build of a website or a platform, right? And it's done very poorly, and it never gets to launch because they know it's done poorly, and that's the harder one. That's the one we come in quite a bit in the past, where we have to then either decide if we're going to build on top of fix it before it goes live, or rebuild it and go from scratch. And a lot of that comes down to, again, if you're not hiring a company, or if you don't internally know the product set or the problem that you're trying to solve with your website, because some websites are very simple. Like you said, like the builders, like if I just need my name out there and I need imagery and content describing me, that's just a website, and you don't need a firm like ours to build that, really. But if I'm trying to create content all the time and I'm doing like extra things, but if I don't know what all those things are and I'm just going to hire a developer to do it, well, you're going to have problems, because they're just going to be, well, they'll add this and then they'll add that, right? Versus if they can think through the whole problem set and define it, then that one person can do a good job. If they can't, then they do need to bring in someone that has expertise of like helping them identify the problems and then build the solution.
I like it. I'll use us as an example. Last year, we did a rebuild of our website. Now, with everything I told you, you're going to guess accurately that I did it myself. But what I did, the kind of the steps I went through was I have a whiteboard right here in front of me, and I just started putting, like I'd put a page. And then I started putting like, what's the purpose of this page? Started building it out, and then laying out, okay, what's the next page? And I did that for probably 3 months. I have other things to do as well. I finally got it completed, and I realized, which I'm happy overall with what I did, but I want to do more. And I'm using currently 5 different pieces. I have this thing where I sell my disc assessments, and I have this piece where maybe I have my podcast, which is hosted by yet another company. And then, we're starting to bring on some online classes. And so we have this other third party. And the next thing you know, you got all this stuff. And I'm sitting in my office some days. Actually, right before we had this call, I was sitting at my conference table with all my to-dos from all these different places, because some of these things, create a to-do for the podcast that you and I are having, because then when this is completed, I get a list of create the artwork, do this. And then, so that's one place, and it's connecting all that stuff together that becomes frustrating. And I'm getting at is, I'm sure there are others out there that go through this same frustration. Is that the kind of place where we can call you and say, hey, we need help?
Yeah, it is. Because we can do a light assessment and kind of potentially organize that. Because so we like to solve problems as simple as possible, like really complicated problems, but solving it as simple as possible. So we don't have to build a whole system, like a whole technology system, to do all those different things. Maybe it's just helping you document like the steps or things like that are still going to be manual, potentially, but at least you have that. An SOP would be one way of putting it, right? Like the steps that I have to do, or someone that I can have someone do, and just really help them define that. It sounds like you're well along that way, but even maybe just organizing it of like bringing in expertise like ourselves around people that are experts in those systems, because they know what they can do and can't do. because a lot of times they can't integrate with it, and then you have to switch over to a different podcasting system. You know, we're not we have our own little podcast, and I can only imagine like the things, like we don't have a lot of guests on ours, but it's just the two of us, the two owners, kind of talking a lot of times. Yet the amount of steps that we have to go through, even with a system that says it's a podcast system,
Yes.
all right, it's still a lot of manual steps that we had to document, for the two of us to kind of go back and forth and manage. So
Yes, it is always fascinating. And again, it's back to that question. I'm just the guy, I'm the talking head. I like to talk.
mhm,
I don't want to create stuff. I just
right.
want to talk. And we can talk afterwards. But I might be able to give you some. We have streamlined that it has
Yeah.
gotten much better, and we found some tools. So, what do you see happening? This is always the big question for our tech folks. What's going to happen over the next year, 2 years, and 5 years as we start
Yeah.
to go on? What are you seeing from the inside? What are going to be the trends? What are things that either somebody just thinking about getting started or somebody that's, out there running their business? What are the things that they should be looking at into the future?
Mhm. Yeah, I think so. Just going at year to year, I think last year, 2025, was a year. Obviously, AI came out. It's been around for a little while, but it came out in a way that people were trying to use it and trying to invest in using it, and no one really figured out. Well, no one. Most people didn't figure out how to use it well. Like we were using it personally, we were using it in companies to like create content, let's say, or just kind of define workflows, and it was working pretty well. This year, I've already seen products coming out where they are solving the problems of the user interface of like a person doesn't want to go to this LLM to do this type of work and then this one to do this type of work. They just want to have a thing to talk to or to type into, and then it'll figure it out and go to all the places. And we're starting to have new products that are going to be doing that. So that's like both personal, but also on the business side of like if you're on the finance side in a company, it can do the things that it's supposed to do. If you're on the technology side, like we can build things really well, better than we could last year. It's still getting there. So I think we're starting to get to real use cases. But we're also starting to see some real kind of financial, like they're starting to cost more.
Yes.
And we're getting that, like the actual cost of these products are coming out. So that might offset like the magic of what we're expecting. We'll see there. But I do think that those new products around AI that are not like just the shiny objects, the ones that are actually doing the things are going to start to emerge a little bit more, and the uses.
We've actually found ourselves, myself being a consultant and a leadership person, that I like tech. I stay up to date. So I have subscriptions to, 10 different AI platforms at this moment in time, but they don't all work. My point is I'm only doing it just to understand it.
Know it.
And now I'm having people, coming and saying, what should we be using? Like you've played around with this stuff. What are you thinking? And my whole point is I'm actually thinking about developing a subscription program which is kind of ironic, but a subscription program to a monthly talk about what the new platforms are, what we're finding, and what we've been testing out with them. Because, I think that may be valuable as we go into the future. But my whole point was it is so easy to all of a sudden have $1,000 bill every month because you've subscribed to all these different things. If they're not, and my recommendation to everybody, try it. And if it's not working, get rid of it. Go to the next
Quickly,
thing, move on. You can come back and check it out in another year. I've only have one, that I have had all along, and I am impressed with it. Excuse me. It seems to be well-rounded and it seems to work well. And they're continually adding things to it. But all the other ones, I have them for a month or two and then move on, try the next thing. So it's kind of fascinating.
I think we're in a very similar boat where we have to, because we do recommend to our clients and we do talk to our clients about them. So we have used every tool and have maintained subscriptions longer than we should have on some of them that were they just weren't accelerating. Like they weren't changing anything, it felt like.
Yes. So before I forget, we want to make sure we let everybody know if somebody's listening and they're like, hey, Matt sounds like he's brilliant. We need to get in touch with him. How do they go about that? And maybe what are those first steps that they should be prepared for?
Yeah. I mean, they can reach out on LinkedIn. Most people have LinkedIn accounts. I'm very active or pretty active on LinkedIn and very open to chatting on through the DMs, but definitely connect. So it's just me. If you look up Matthew Dorman, I'm based out of Denver. So that's me, or north of Denver. Going to the website, endeavor.io. It's weird spelling, so it's kind of hard to get to, but you can always go there if you're just looking at wanting to look at the company and reach out to us through the contact form. But feel free, if you've heard me on here, to hit me up on LinkedIn and go direct to me and we can chat.
Awesome. Now we touched on kind of what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see when you're going in to talk with people. I was just thinking about it, kind of another side of that. When you talk with a company and maybe their system's outdated, their website's outdated, what are the biggest hindrances that you run into with getting them to want to move forward?
Yeah, I think this is so for us moving into kind of a newer industry for us. This is the biggest one where we know there's a problem out there around the data being accurate, but also just performance of websites. Because we see it all over the place and we can test it. I think a lot of people don't really truly monitor their websites, monitor the transactions on their websites because they're using these tools and they work the time that they're doing it, and that seems fine to them. And they don't realize that systems break all the time. Code, especially web development code, it breaks all the time, but just in small ways that you typically don't see it unless you're monitoring it. So that's the hardest thing for us to just educate the whole industry as a whole, that there are problems out there, and if you're not looking for them, then you can assume that you're assuming that they're just not there. But you're kind of it's kind of blind. And
for those and you're specifically working with folks that are business to consumer, and for those companies, if a consumer if there's something broken in the process and a consumer runs into a problem on a specific product, they're just going to move on and go somewhere else. They're not going to call you and tell you. Not today.
Yeah. I talked to my partner about this. Unless you're selling something that is so unique that they're not going to find it anywhere else for a while, right? Then that's the only way that little barrier is going to not affect them, not affect a certain percent. There's almost always going to be a competitor, and they're going to go and look at the other site, or just to get into the technology side, the AI. Because the AI tools they're trying to use human kind of interfaces to monitor these sites. If they see the bugs, then it's almost like an SEO ding where you had, a broken link or something like that. It's very similar with if the checkout flow is broken in some or just looks weird, they're going to ding you as well, and then not send anyone to you for a while.
Yeah, real life example. Last month we had an event and I was promoting it, and I told everybody, go to our website, check out our calendar. Go to our website, check out our calendar. Any social media, go to our website, check out our calendar. The event day came, and there was only one person that showed up, and it happened to be a person that I specifically talked to and sent them the link. Mm-hmm. And I thought, and this is uncommon, and I thought, out of all these people, why didn't a few of them pop into the event? And I went back and looked, our calendar's broken. I mean, it was as simple as that. And I never looked. I just kept telling people, go to the calendar. It doesn't work.
Absolutely. Yep.
So as we draw to an end here, we'll kind of shift gears a little bit. We end every session with a couple of rapid fire questions. I ask all my guests the same questions in hopes that one of you will become so famous that I'll be able to publish this someday and become,
Absolutely.
Super wealthy, after that.
Right.
But the first question is, over your career, what is the single best piece of advice somebody's ever given you?
I would say, so this this was a manager, or like I was 3 levels below him, and he told me that managing people, the best experience he had to now how to manage people was that he had raised teenagers. Um, at the time, I had no kids. I was like, "What are you talking about? Whatever." um, I've now raised teenagers. Now they're adults, essentially, and yes, like you're getting real world, like live action kind of conversations of someone that is they're who knows how they're coming into the day, right? And now I know, because who knows how my sons are waking up in the day, and all those interactions have helped me. I think.
Awesome. Second question, throughout your career, what has maybe been your go-to book that you continually go back to get good insights out of?
I don't have a good answer for this one. I'm not well, I am a book reader. I don't like adhere to like one and go back to it. I kind of just read and then move on to the next recommended book. Trying to think. There's Entre Leadership. It's I'm blanking on their name. Dave Ramsey.
Yes.
His team wrote that. That has been, we kind of looked at that a couple of years ago, and for our company, like kind of been trying to model after that. So less personal leadership, but kind of company type things.
Awesome. Next question. If we could magically get all of the school administrators across the world into one room, and you had just a second to give them maybe something that they could add into a student's career and life in school that would help to turn out a better, well-rounded, better prepared for life student, what would that one piece of advice be?
I do think that in a lot of these programs or a lot of schools have them, the types of clubs, making sure that you are invested in maintaining the club kind of ecosystem at your schools, because that's getting the social interaction that the kids and then adults need, and not just being able to talk to people, but they're getting the conflicts, they're getting like all the things that happen, because that doesn't happen in a classroom typically. They're just absorbing and responding type of thing. But the clubs is where they're getting, at least I've seen with my sons are now, my youngest is a senior in high school, so I've seen the process that when they're the growth they get are in their clubs. I think more. I mean, sports is great too, but not everyone can play sports,
yep.
Right? So, but the clubs, anyone can be in a club as long as you have enough clubs on campus or on the school grounds. You're going to get everyone in the school.
I like that. So the next one's a little bit of a loaded question for you. In the ever-changing world of technology, everything we're getting on a daily basis feels like on an hourly basis sometimes. What is the most useful piece of technology that you are using today?
I do think this is going to be, so this might be the most objected answer, because it's fraught with security issues right now, but it's a program is now called Open Claude. If you're familiar with these AI agents, it's basically an agent that runs on in my case, it's a dedicated machine, but it can then control LLMs. It can control all the LLMs. And I just talked to, and that was where I was getting when I was saying you can now talk to something or type into one thing, and then it figures out how to solve the problems, and it kind of orchestrates everything. It's fraught with like security issues because it's so open. So
Gotcha.
I don't recommend people use it unless I think we're going to have SaaS applications very soon that are going to be doing that in the next probably weeks, honestly. But that's the tool I'm using. It's called Open Claude. If you want to look at like what it can do, but don't do it unless you know what you're doing.
Got it. Well, Matt, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend with our listeners. We appreciate it. Hopefully, maybe you might be a great person to have on periodically because of all the changes that are happening to kind of keep us abreast of what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, next month will be different. So
awesome. For our listeners, if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to check out our past episodes, and don't forget to give us 5 stars, and you'll also get the updates when new episodes are released. So until next time, we appreciate all of you.